cop makes profane comments and instantly regrets it.
You told me to eat, right? Marler?
I messed up. I apologize.
Now that you on film, you messed up.
No,
so you haven't violated any of my rights.
No,
the first thing you said to me coming here was, is that my baby mom or my girlfriend? Then he started raising his voice.
In Suisun City, a police officer's job came to an end after a distressing verbal confrontation with a resident and a military veteran of 9 years. The officer, Cody Marler, was accused of using inappropriate language during an investigation into a crime that the resident, Syra Hawkins, had no connection to.
Because she thought I could potentially be wrongfully arrested or murdered in cold blood on my front doorstep.
This unfortunate incident left Hawkins and his family shaken, prompting them to call for sensitivity training due to being mistakenly targeted by officers. In the midst of their daily activities, Syra Hawkins, a military veteran who had served for 9 years, and his wife Megan were enjoying some quality time with their daughter in the living room. Then, out of nowhere, police cars stopped outside their house and 2 officers came out. Seconds later, the family heard loud pounding on the door. When Hawkins finally came out, he was met by an aggressive cop who asked him. The officers, at multiple points in the footage, try to avoid talking to Hawkins and try to talk to his wife inside, saying that they were on a welfare check. Hawkins was not happy with any of that, and he called out the officers by saying they were infringing on his civil rights. Officer Marler does not like this statement, and this is when things begin to get heated. Then, just a few moments later, Marler says this.
I'm going to talk to you. First of all, came to my house and said, is that my girlfriend or my baby mama? That's my wife. So that's disrespectful starting off.
All right, sir. So
that was disrespectful starting off, and then he's raising his voice at me.
Okay, I understand.
So now I can raise my voice, right?
No, you can eat a dick.
What's his problem?
Okay.
Nah, I need your badge numbers. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I'll give you my badge number. But so the reason we're here is to
now
make
you're
sure
telling me the
somebody
reason
is
after you told me to
okay.
eat a dick. Sir, so you told me to eat a dick, right? Marler?
I messed up. I apologize.
Now that you on film, you messed up.
No,
So you haven't violated any of my rights. The first thing you said to me coming here was, is that my baby mom or my girlfriend?
Acting quickly, Syra Hawkins decided to record the rest of the encounter just after the officer had made those hurtful comments and asked for their names and badge numbers. In the footage, Hawkins goes on a raging fit, calling out Marler for his profane and inappropriate actions. Soon after, Officer Marler was asked by his partner to leave the front porch and go back to his vehicle. Later on in the video, the female officer explains to Hawkins that they had been following up on a call from North Bay Medical Center, which prompted them to check on a woman named Giselle. The call was concerning a 3-year-old child who had accidentally ingested nail polish remover. Police Chief Aaron Roth confirmed his officers were at the wrong address. I was very disappointed to learn about the actions of one of our officers during an interaction with a resident over the weekend. The incident and the officer's behavior are not indicative of the values of this organization, nor are they a reflection of the hard work of the women and men of this department. The reality of it is that's not how we want to interact with our community, said Roth. The chief also said that Officer Marler involved had been with the force less than 18 months and was still in his probationary period. Now, he's no longer with the department. Expressing his hopes for change, Syra Hawkins stated that he wished the police department would view this incident as an opportunity for growth and improvement. My daughter has been traumatized. My wife has been traumatized. I have been traumatized, said Hawkins, and it doesn't have to be that way. If you think a cop shouting profanities at a citizen is wild, then wait till you see our next story, where 2 female officers decide the fate of a speeding driver with a coin toss. Number 2, officers flip a coin to determine arrest of a woman. In Roswell, Georgia, a routine traffic stop turned into a concerning incident when 2 female police officers resorted to a coin toss app to decide the fate of a woman they pulled over for speeding. Sarah Webb, the driver in question, found herself at the mercy of Officer Courtney Brown and Officer Christy Wilson, who were on traffic duty that day. As Officer Brown approached Webb's vehicle, she wasted no time in scolding her for driving recklessly on a wet road.
The ground's wet, it's been raining, you're going over 80 miles an hour on this type of a road. That's reckless driving, ma'am.
Despite Webb's explanation of being late for her job at a hair salon, Officer Brown remained unsympathetic. She asked for Webb's driver's license, told her to stay in the car, and came back to her police vehicle. However, things took a shady turn from there. It became evident from the conversation captured on Officer Brown's body cam that her radar gun was not functioning, and she had merely estimated Webb's speed.
She was going like almost 90 down 92. Oh, really? She flew past me. I had to get up to 90 to catch her.
Wow.
My CAD's not working. Is yours?
I checked.
Can you see if, can you check the tag too? I'm gonna have to restart this and see what the deal is.
Furthermore, she couldn't run a check on Webb's license because her system was down. Faced with this dilemma, Officer Brown called for backup, and she and Officer Wilson began discussing what to do next. In a surprising twist, the officers decided to leave the decision of Webb's fate up to a coin flip app. On the body cam footage, Officer Wilson could be heard saying,
Who's that?
A head, our tail.
Okay.
This is tail, right?
Yeah. So really.
23.
Michael Jordan? Hi. So got too fast for. Let me write this down.
Too fast for conditions.
Is it reckless?
Yeah, you can do reckless. And then speeding.
The sound of the coin flip followed, and one of the officers confirmed. However, ignoring the outcome, the first officer proceeded to say 23, which is the Roswell Police Code for making an arrest. Consequently, Webb was charged and arrested for driving too fast given the road conditions and reckless driving. According to Officer Brown, Webb had been speeding at over 80 miles per hour on a wet road where the maximum speed limit was 45 miles per hour. Once the video of the incident surfaced online, the Roswell Police Department launched an internal investigation into the officer's actions. Officer Wilson and Officer Brown were placed on administrative leave while the investigation was ongoing. After a few weeks, both officers were terminated from their positions due to their unethical conduct during Sarah Webb's arrest. The charges against Webb were also dropped later. Police Chief Rusty Grant of Roswell expressed his shock upon learning of the incident just before the July 4th holiday. He stated, "This behavior does not represent the hard-working officers of the Roswell Police Department." Chief Grant further emphasized his higher expectations of law enforcement officers and his appalled reaction to trivializing such an important decision as making an arrest. Roswell Mayor Lori Henry also condemned the officer's actions, expressing her shock and offense in a statement posted on her Facebook page when the arrest video surfaced online. She deemed their behavior inexcusable and unprofessional, emphasizing that it should not reflect upon the police officers who diligently serve and protect the community of Roswell. City Administrator Gary Palmer joined in addressing the incident, announcing on Facebook that a broader investigation into the police department's practices was being conducted to address bigger issues. Palmer expressed his astonishment at the lack of professionalism and compassion displayed by some officers, asserting that those who failed to meet community standards would be removed from service. Thankfully, the female officers were terminated for their unprofessional and unethical actions. However, in our next case, we've got an activist who was detained by officers twice without any explanation. Number 3, former female agent settles lawsuit after being detained by officers twice. In South Florida, a woman named Susan Corey found herself caught up in a series of unfortunate events, all because of a parking dispute in her neighborhood. It all started back in January 2015, when Officer Gregory Williams from the Miami-Dade Schools Police Department approached her while she was recording him on her cell phone.
Phone in public?
Why are you filming?
I was just trying to tell him I was just getting his tag.
In just a matter of seconds, the officer then proceeded to put Susan's hands behind her back, leading to a rather unpleasant situation. Susan ended up on the ground yelling in pain. She talks about how she heard her elbow make a popping sound and later found out that it got dislocated by Officer Williams. To make matters worse, another man joined in to keep her pinned down, who Susan later discovered was an off-duty Homestead police officer. What's truly insane about this whole incident is how no one bothered to explain why they were detaining her. All they said was,
Dislocated her elbow. Joined in the arrest by an off-duty Homestead officer. At no point do they tell her why.
And I said to him, "What are you arresting me for?" He says, "Oh, we're not arresting you, we're Baker acting."
Now, let's back up a bit and talk about what triggered this whole mess. It turns out that there had been an ongoing parking dispute between Susan and her neighbors against the families of a young baseball league that used the fields at Glades Middle School, despite the availability of a parking lot on the school property. These baseball families had a habit of illegally parking on sidewalks and lawns, blocking driveways, and leaving behind a trail of trash on their residents' properties. More than 60 neighbors had even signed a letter to the Miami-Dade County School Board in 2013 highlighting the issue. Unfortunately, they received a disappointing response claiming there was no problem. Frustrated by the lack of action, Susan took it upon herself to document the ongoing problem by capturing photos and videos, which naturally led to tensions between her and the baseball families. Now, Susan wasn't just an ordinary citizen caught up in this situation. She's actually a former federal law enforcement agent, so she knew a thing or two about the law. That's why she decided to fight back and filed a lawsuit against the Miami-Dade County School Board and Officer Williams, accusing them of violating her civil rights. The school district finally took notice and sent a letter to the Glades Baseball and Softball League, instructing them to park only in the designated school lot. However, tensions remained high, and in June 2018, things went awry again. This time, a Miami-Dade police officer responded to a call involving Susan. The officer was already familiar with her, but instead of a friendly conversation, things quickly escalated.
You for your name?
Susan Corey, I live right here.
Thank you very much. No, ma'am, do not go anywhere. I'm speaking to you, and I'm trying to deal with you accordingly.
Why are you yelling?
I don't know, because I'm talking to you.
You don't have to yell. Ma'am, what are you doing to me?
Susan tried to reason with the officer, only to find herself face down on the sidewalk with her hands cuffed behind her back moments later. She repeatedly asked what she had done wrong, but all she got in response were requests to stop resisting. However, Susan adamantly denied resisting at all. The officer ended up arresting her for disorderly conduct and resisting without violence. Luckily, both charges were eventually dropped when the state attorney's office declined to prosecute. But the story doesn't end here. In a surprising turn of events, a federal jury awarded Susan a whopping $520,000 in damages for the physical and mental harm she had endured. She had been wrongly institutionalized for a psychological examination under the Baker Act, a state law that allows for involuntary emergency mental health services. The jury agreed that Officer Williams had no probable cause to commit Susan to a mental institution and that there was no reasonable basis to believe she would have caused harm to herself or others. To make amends, Miami-Dade County attorneys reached a settlement with Susan in 2021, agreeing to pay her $45,000. Even the officers involved in the incidents issued a heartfelt apology. Finally, after a long and arduous journey, Susan could put this painful chapter behind her and move forward with her life. If you want to watch more of these videos, please subscribe to the channel.